Pink Floyd is one of the most influential rock bands of all time that helped shape progressive rock music during the 1970s. They are known for their groundbreaking concept albums, psychedelic rock sound, space rock experiments, and mood-inducing music. The band was formed in London in 1965 and consisted of Roger Waters, bass guitar, vocals, Syd Barrett, lead guitar, vocals, Nick Mason, drums, and Richard Wright, keyboards. Early years, 1965 to 1968. The band's origins can be traced back to 1962 when Roger Waters and Nick Mason formed a band called Sigma 6. In 1964, guitarists Bob Close and Roger Waters, who switched to bass, keyboardist Richard Wright, and drummer Nick Mason joined together to form a psychedelic rock band called the T-Set. Syd Barrett, a childhood friend of Waters, joined the group as a lead guitarist in 1965. They soon changed their name to the Pink Floyd sound and eventually just Pink Floyd. Syd Barrett became the dominant musical force in the early years of Pink Floyd. He was a creative, innovative songwriter and gifted guitarist. Under his leadership, Pink Floyd developed a following on the London underground music scene. They began playing psychedelic space rock music with long instrumental sections and wild live shows that incorporated strobe lights, film projections, and trippy light shows. The band signed a record deal with EMI and released their debut album The Piper at the Gates of Dawn in 1967. Produced by legendary Beatles producer George Martin, the album showcased Syd's eccentric lyrics, creative songwriting, and imaginative guitar playing. Songs like Astronomy Domini showed Barrett's fascination with science fiction and altered states of consciousness. The album was a critical and commercial success in the UK, reaching number 6 on the charts. However, Syd Barrett began suffering from mental health issues including schizophrenia, drug problems, and memory loss. His erratic behavior made him unreliable and unpredictable, and eventually Pink Floyd had to replace him in 1968. David Gilmour, a longtime friend of the band, joined as the new guitarist and lead vocalist. The Dark Side of the Moon era, 1968 to 1979. After Syd Barrett's departure, the band went through a period of transition. Roger Waters began taking more control of the band creatively and musically. Their albums like More, Ummagumma, Atom Heart Mother, and Obscured by Clouds explored experimental rock with long instrumental passages and classical music influences. The aural landscapes and sound experiments explored in these albums laid the groundwork for their future masterpieces in the 1970s. Pink Floyd reached new heights of success and critical acclaim with The Dark Side of the Moon in 1973. The album focused on themes of mental illness, consumerism, death, and spirituality. It included the singles Money and Time, which became rock radio staples. Dark Side of the Moon utilized the band's developing skills at extended melodic passages and sound effects combined with David Gilmour's refined guitar skills and their ability to create concept albums. The album spent an unprecedented 741 weeks on the Billboard charts and continues to sell millions of copies to this day. It helped establish Pink Floyd as superstars of the 1970s with massive stadium tours and huge commercial success. It remains as one of the best-selling albums of all time. Following Dark Side of the Moon's success, Pink Floyd continued establishing the progressive rock genre with Wish You Were Here, 1975, and Animals, 1977. Wish You Were Here paid tribute to their former bandmate Syd Barrett with the songs Shine on You Crazy Diamond and Wish You Were Here. Animals combined music with allegorical tales about society and human nature, focusing on the vicious cycle of overworking citizens. These albums continued the band's commercial success and critical acclaim. The Wall and solo work, 1979 to 1985. Pink Floyd's most ambitious and well-known album is 1979's The Wall. It combines music with a semi-autobiographical story about alienation and isolation, inspired by the difficult childhood of Roger Waters. It features Waters' poetic lyrics discussing themes of isolation, oppression, authoritarianism, absentee fathers, and the desires and pressures of rock stardom. The album contains the rock classics Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, Comfortably Numb, Hey You, and Run Like Hell. The Wall was accompanied by a feature film directed by Alan Parker released in 1982. It achieved massive commercial success, topping charts around the world and remains one of the best-selling albums of all time. However, tensions within the band arose during its making and recording, as Roger Waters gained more control of the band's creative direction. This eventually led Pink Floyd members David Gilmour and Nick Mason to create solo albums during the 1980s. The band's final album with Roger Waters was 1983's The Final Cut, a solo Waters album in all but name. Waters left the band in 1985, starting a period of litigation and acrimony between him and the remaining members. Post-Waters era and breakup, 1987 to 2005. After Roger Waters' departure, David Gilmour and Nick Mason carried on under the name Pink Floyd with new bassist and guitarist session musicians. Their first post-Waters album, 1987's A Momentary Lapse of Reason, was a commercial success. However, critics felt that the album lacked some of the depth and complexity of earlier Pink Floyd music. The band's last album before breaking up was The Division Bell in 1994. The album produced the memorable single High Hopes and contains more reminiscences of the band's past. Gilmour and Mason concluded their Pink Floyd career with a worldwide stadium tour in 1994 that grossed $389 million and set world records for the highest-grossing music tour at the time. Pink Floyd finally disbanded in 2006. Despite the infighting and personality clashes over the years, the band members created some of the most influential progressive rock music of all time that continues to captivate listeners today. Their albums highlight Roger Waters' poetic lyrics, Richard Wright's ethereal keyboard melodies, David Gilmour's emotionally charged guitar solos, and Nick Mason's precise yet groovy drumming. Their music transformed rock music forever through concept albums, lavish productions, sonic experimentation, and stadium-size epics. While they may be gone, Pink Floyd continues to live on through their timeless music. Here are some additional interesting facts about Pink Floyd. Syd Barrett came up with the band's name by combining the first names of two American blues musicians, Pink Anderson and Floyd Council. However, the band members didn't really like the name at first. During Barrett's time in the band, their live shows were famously chaotic and psychedelic. They would project flipped and strobing film footage, have vivid light shows, and play long instrumental jams. Barrett's erratic behavior on stage added to the surreal vibe. David Gilmour originally joined Pink Floyd as a sideman to replace Syd Barrett on some concerts. But after Barrett officially left the band in 1968, Gilmour became Pink Floyd's permanent guitarist and co-lead vocalist with Roger Waters. Each member of Pink Floyd was given equal share of royalties from their albums, regardless of who wrote the songs. This led to tensions eventually, as Roger Waters claimed he wrote the majority of their material. The concept and storyline for The Wall was partly inspired by Roger Waters' difficult childhood. His father was killed in World War II when Waters was very young, and he had strained relationships with his mother and school teachers. Despite Waters' creative control over The Wall, David Gilmour's guitar solos and vocals are what elevated many of the songs and gave them an emotionally powerful tone. Gilmour's guitar work on songs like Comfortably Numb and Another Brick in The Wall Part 2 is legendary. The Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here albums were considered a joint effort between all members of Pink Floyd, with songs created collaboratively. But with The Wall, Roger Waters essentially took total control of the creative direction. Pink Floyd is known for their innovative use of studio technology and production. They popularized the use of quadraphonic sound, experimental sound effects, and lavish multitrack recordings.